So I guess this is kind of the biggest news of the day, so we do have to cover it. And this is the fact that Dan Poulter, who is a Tory MP, has now defected to the Labour Party with immediate effect. So let's have a look what he has to say. Ex-Health Minister Dan Poulter, who also works as a hospital doctor, says the Conservatives have become a nationalist party of the right. Let's have a look and see what he has to say. A Tory MP and former Health Minister has staged dramatic defection to Labour, saying Conservatives have become a nationalist party of the right that has abandoned compassion and no longer prioritises the NHS. I don't know why he seems to think that now is the time that they've become these things, when they've been this for the last 14 years, really and truly. But he's an MP for Central Suffolk and North Ipswich, who works part-time as a mental health doctor in an NHS hospital, and announced he was resigning as a Tory MP and would be taking the Labour whip until the next election in an exclusive interview with The Observer. He said he would not seek re-election to the House of Commons at the next general election, but writing in The Observer, he says he envisages a role advising the Labour Party on its policies on mental health while focusing more on his NHS work. Super interesting, right? Super interesting for him to say, well, I want to advise Labour Party in future because I expect them to be in government. I know that I'm going to be standing down as an MP, so my 90k a year job is suddenly on the rafters now. So I now actually have to try and find a way of getting money future. I'll advise Labour Party on policy. I will do this grand defection to try and speed up the electoral process and the undoing of the Conservative Party as a political force. And then maybe down the line, guys, maybe I might be rewarded with a peerage. I wonder if we'll see a Lord Poulter coming anytime soon. Yeah, real Christian Wakeford vibes. Yeah, absolutely. What's interesting about all of this is that he talks in his interview, say here, I could not go on as part of that. I may have been able to look my NHS colleagues in the eye, my patients in the eye, and my constituents in the eye. I know that the Conservative government has been failing on the thing I care about most, which is the NHS and its patients. So it's clear, first of all, he has discussions between senior Labour figures about timing and organisation of his likely defection, as well as advisory roles he could play in the future. So it's clear that he's using this as a political tool to further his own personal career, rather than some kind of grand statement of morality, future advisory role, future consultancy pay, future seat in the House of Lords. But it's weird for him right now. To say, well, I need to defect to Labour because the Tories have undermined the NHS specifically. No word on the austerity, which he voted through. No word on all of the terrible foreign policy, which he voted through. No word on the hostile environment, which he voted all of that through. The Rwanda plan, voted that through as well. Now he's saying that the Tories have abandoned the NHS. I'll tell you what, this is a really interesting graph I'm just about to bring up here. Let's just have a look and see what the NHS spending has been as a percentage of GDP since 2010. So in 2010, it was 10%, which dropped to 9.6% by 2018. He's an MP for all of this period, and for the entirety of that period, NHS spending as a percentage of GDP has been lower than it was in 2010, and has dropped every year apart from one of those years. So he was very happy, as a Conservative Party MP, happy to sign off reduction in NHS provision as a percentage of GDP, under David Cameron and Theresa May, stood on the manifestos that said so as well, happy to vote the actual budgets through the Commons as well. And then if you look here, current spending, 11.3%. But of course there's this pandemic spending here, which you can take into account. But in terms of relative NHS spending, this isn't nominal spending, this is relative NHS spending as a percentage of GDP, is way higher now than what it ever was when he was voting through budgets, and even higher than it was at the end of the last Labour government, NHS spending as a percentage of GDP. Why? Why, pray tell, Mr. Poulter, were you not being aghast at the state of the NHS when actual budgets were being shrunk? But now they've put record amounts into the NHS, now you say that they don't work. Is it anything to do with the fact that the Tories are, in some polls, 25 points behind the Labour Party? Is it not anything to do with the fact that the Conservative Party as a political force are entirely spent, and the public hates them, and therefore will hate you as a Conservative MP by proxy, and you're looking to save your public image and your career by defecting to the Labour Party? Because if it genuinely was about being an English nationalist, if it really was about failing on the NHS, then you wouldn't be doing it when NHS spending is higher than it has been since 2010. You wouldn't be doing that. You would have not put through all of those budgets in the first place. Absolute nonsense. Especially, as Satnav points out in chat, now that Wes Streeting is the one saying, oh, we need more private involvement after being donated to by people with investments in private healthcare. Isn't it weird? Now that Labour have changed, which he even says, right? He even says in his article that he did for The Observer, oh, well, that Labour is a changed party now. It's now a pro-business party, which Rachel Reeves has been talking about today as well. They're being the most pro-business government ever, the supposed Labour Party, quote unquote. Weird now he's he's jumping ship now there's no alternative anymore, getting a highly paid advisory role for the Labour government. And on top of that, when all of the reasons that he gives for defecting in the first place make less sense now than they did when he was actually enthusiastic Conservative Party MP. Ridiculous levels of hypocrisy here. Of course, he's been warmly welcomed by Sir Keith himself. It is fantastic to welcome Dan Poulter MP to today's Change Labour Party. Yeah, Change Labour.
You are a liar.
My party is back in the service of working people. Our mission is to grow the economy and rebuild our public services. I'm delighted that Dan will be helping us get the NHS back on its feet. Across the country, more and more people are switching to Labour because they know that this Change Labour Party can deliver the change that Britain needs, which apparently is going to be by just accepting people like Christian Wakeford and Dan Poulter, who are part of the government that got us into this position in the first place. It doesn't reassure me that you have the tools to solve that when the very people who caused the problem in the first place are happy to join your party. Like, this isn't people you voted Conservative in the past, now voting Labour because they'd be convinced otherwise. That would be winning the argument. People always talk about the left wanting to find traitors rather than welcome converts. But if you accept all of your opponent's ideology, you are the convert, not them. Converts are people who use beliefs that you change, not allegiance that they change. You need to change their beliefs. I'm not changing anybody's beliefs by just saying, well, the Tories were right about everything in terms of macro policy, but we just need to do it better than them. So much so that we just accept people who've decided to defect from them, regardless. Of course, when it comes to this guy, he's not going to be an MP, unlike Christian Wakeford, who is running as the Bury North MP to save his career. And there was no Labour selection for that seat. They just have to vote for a fucking Tory who said that Labour are a bunch of C words in WhatsApp messages to his Tory colleagues. Like, these are the kind of people the Labour Party will accept. Ridiculous. All ridiculous. All is absolutely ridiculous. That both of these parties are completely untrustworthy. He also said a statement here to the BBC, which we can watch as well.
I found it increasingly difficult to look my NHS colleagues in the eye, my patients in the eye, and my constituents in the eye with good conscience. And I feel that the NHS deserves better than it has at the moment in terms of how it's run and governed. The party I was elected into valued public services. It valued...
That's just a straight up lie. Sure start, scrapped, NHS austerity, welfare state austerity, schools austerity. You stripped public services to the bone. 40% council budget cuts since 2010. If anything, they are the party that deliberately defunded public services with budgets that you voted through. And now you're saying, oh, well, think of the public services, everybody, after Boris Johnson ran on a manifesto which at least didn't promise austerity. The first time we have a Conservative government, which is the Boris Johnson administration, that, whilst being English nationalist and somebody who I wouldn't want to vote for, at least admitted that public services need more money. And you're trying to say that you got elected into somebody that cared about public services? How dare you? How dare you, after 330,000 deaths of austerity at your hands, that you voted for, coming to tell me, right, that you were elected on a position of wanting to have strong public services? How dare you, Mr. Poulter? How dare you? Ridiculous comment for him to make.
They had a compassionate view about supporting the more disadvantaged in society.
You gave tax cuts to the rich whilst increasing taxes on normal people, and on top of that took away the safety net for some important people to the point at which UN special rapporteurs decided that our country was in violation of the human rights of the disabled. That's the government that you voted for, that you stood for, that it was budgets that you passed in government. Or compassion for the less fortunate.
I think the Conservative Party today is in a very different place. Its focus is not on delivering or supporting high quality public services.
The brass neck of this guy to say that now is the time when he feels like he can't support the Conservative Party with record NHS funding, with a manifesto that included 40 new hospitals for the NHS, after getting elected on a platform of continued cutbacks of the NHS, of democide of the disabled and the poor. Incredulous. It's almost like he's lying, and all he cares about is his future political and financial career, advising the future government, and that's why he's defecting at the very, very, very last minute. The very last minute he could possibly defect. Now he's defecting because it's what's good for his own personal career. Apparently as well, he was a Conservative health minister who was responsible for selling Britain's supplier of blood plasma to a private equity firm for £200 million. And no one will question it. None of the journalists will ever question any of the information, like the true information that I've put to you here. No one will question it. You know why no one will question it? It's because all of these people, all of these sensible people who now support the current Labour Party of austerity and have cut back to their promises and whatever, fiscal rules, All of these people who now support Keir Starmer as the sensible, safe pair of hands, all of their politics is based on vibes. It's all vibes. That's all it is, right? Keir Starmer has the good vibes because he's a sensible man with a haircut. And so was David Cameron for identical reasons. Policy? What's policy? All of these new sensible centrist types all voted for David Cameron in 2010. They voted for him in 2015 when he was a sensible, safe pair of hands because their mortgage rate had stayed low. Forget the austerity, forget the democide, forget all of the horrendous shit they did to public services from 2010 to 2015, right? All of this blaming of Rishi Sunak for the problems in the NHS that are explicitly problems caused by Cameron and Osborne. We know this from the statements they gave in the COVID inquiry. All of these problems has been created by these people is to wash their hands of it. Oh, Sunak's the problem. Johnson is the problem. It's only the current iteration of the Conservative Party that is bad. It was fine under Mr. Ham-faced Pigfuck. Mr. Ham-faced Pigfuck, he wasn't a problem because he had the vibes. He had the correct vibes. Sunak and Johnson, though, they have bad vibes. We can't support them, even though Johnson and Sunak were the ones who increased the NHS budgets after they were cut by Osborne and Cameron. But because Osborne and Cameron were sensible looking, because they kept their mortgage rates low, they continually voted for them at the behest of the poor. And now they have the gall, they have the cheek to turn around to us and tell us we have to vote for the Labour Party that has the same kind of NHS privatisation policies as the Conservative Party, who will welcome their MPs in with open arms and tell us we're the Tory enablers for not voting for this shit. Well, they were sitting around happily living in their low mortgage rate dream world under David Cameron, just completely ignoring the democide. Oh, but there was the 2012 Olympics, but things got bad after Brexit and they got really bad with Boris Johnson because he was floppy hair Brexit man, and that's all that matters. That's all that matters is floppy hair Brexit man. Policy doesn't matter. Economic policy doesn't matter. What they actually do for poor people in it, that doesn't matter at all. I'm sick of it. I'm absolutely sick of it. But they just want to wash their hands of it. In 20 years' time, whilst our economy is still in a doom loop that's been in forever, people will look back at the 2010 to 2018 era and wonder what the hell we thought we were doing. We'll wonder what the hell that we thought we were doing by supporting the Conservative government that cut budgets, that put up taxes on consumption during a liquidity trap, and we must have thought that we were absolutely crazy. That we were absolutely mental to do it, to continue supporting these people. And all of the Starmeroids, right now, all of the Dan Poulters of this world, all of the Christian Wakefords, will think that their hands are clean because they jumped ship when things looked bad. But all of the damage has been done. All of the damage was done from 2010 to 2018 during the austerity period. But they don't want to admit it because they're all complicit. So they have to blame the Brexit man, Boris Johnson, and Rishi Sunak the robot when they picked up an economy that had already died. And you can blame Sunak for plenty of things. I despise him. I think he's terrible. But defunding the NHS, defunding public services, inflicting awful standards of living on the poorest in society, that precedes them. That was all Cameron and Osborne's fault. But they don't want to admit it because they supported it. Hey there, if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for membership to just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.